There is one thing to be said for coincidences. There aren't any. And before you think I'm crazy or just narrow-minded, consider the following story of how I became a published author. A day came when I was confronted with an indisputable fact. My eternal soul lives in nothing more than crockery. That day came in May 1998. A crippling pain hit me in the morning. I ignored it and went to work. It returned with a vengeance by noon. At 1 p.m., I found myself in the emergency room. A disc had herniated in my neck, and I faced surgery with a really long recovery. As they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Indeed, He does. Because if the disc in my neck had not herniated, if I had not read 100 books in 90 days because I could do nothing else while I healed, and if I had not listened to a good friend who suggested I write a novel, we would not be talking today. I took courses, joined online chat groups, and talked about writing until I was blue in the face. I was trying to convince myself that writing wasn't for me. In the end, I accepted the idea of writing was not going to go away. That was the day I started my journey as an author. It took 12 years to summon the courage and face the passion that would not leave no matter what I did. In all the trips down other pathways, one helped me. I found out about National Novel Writing Month from a contact I made on a Christian Writers Forum. This is a yearly event where over 300,000 writers come together to grind out their individual novels in 30 days. I had tried everything else, so what was there to lose? I committed to the project. Lo and behold, Raven's Cove was born. Once written, I was faced with the frightening and somewhat overwhelming question every writer has: what now? My answer for several months was nothing. This was when I first discovered that writing a book is akin to giving birth. I was not putting my baby out into the world for criticism and rejection. So I let the book sit in the dark for several months. It stayed in the rawest of formats, and I think I was actually in denial that I had written an entire novel. I didn't have, or make, the time to edit it because I had no clue where to go and who to trust with my baby. John, my husband, read the prologue and told me it was great. Of course he did. He wanted dinner and to sleep in his own bed. What else would he have said? On some level, I knew he meant it. I also knew he loved me, and love can be blind, so I dismissed his compliment. It just so happened that my father-in-law came to visit the summer after I wrote Raven's Cove. He asked if I might allow him to read it. His reading it was not such a frightening thought, and to be honest, I really wanted his opinion. I trusted his view because he has a PhD in education and had published works of his own. He also happened to be the most avid reader I had ever met. I gave him the book. He and my husband left that weekend for our RV in Anchor Point, Alaska. He read it there. He came back and told me he really liked it. He said he had read authors he thought should have never been published, and he thought mine should be. My husband, with the "I told you so" look, agreed. Then he took it a step further and emailed links to several publishers and publishing houses with information on what it took to get the book to press. And here's where providence is again disguised as coincidence. One of those names was Publication Consultants. I debated sending out query letters to the big houses. I heard stories of books that were tied up for months, even a year or more, by those big houses that had initially accepted the author's work and then left them hanging forever. I debated the self-publishing houses, and again read and heard of the horror stories of authors that were taken financially to the point it wasn't worthwhile to pursue marketing their books. With all this, I decided I wanted to be able to look a publisher in the eye, so I met with Evan Swenson of Publication Consultants. Before I did, I reviewed the website and the different contracts available to an author. They all seemed above board and fair. I reviewed what authors had said about them, and it sounded good, so I did call. Evan reviewed the first few pages of what was to be Raven's Cove. There were some problems, but he told me the story was good and he would publish it after I took it to an editor to fix the boulders. His words for problems. The rest is history. Publication consultants was and still is invaluable to me. They have taught and are still teaching me the ins and outs of the roads to becoming a successful author. There have been numerous mountains to climb and valleys to traverse. They have stuck with me throughout the process and have opened doors that self-publishing could not. Without publication consultants, I would not have reached the goal of becoming a published author. As I stated when we began this conversation, there are no coincidences. Each occurrence that seemed so small still led me to the adventure of becoming a published author. To date, the journey continues and the entire Iconoclast thriller series is complete. Now I'm gearing up for a whole new series of books. This is where Author Masterminds comes into the publishing picture. Author Masterminds is a different kind of website built to help readers discover and get to know an exclusive group of like-minded, serious, and dedicated authors. Each author's pages include website, social media, and even contact information. Consequently, you get to know the authors personally, not just their work. As I mentioned earlier, Author Masterminds connects authors and readers in new, unique ways. Here you'll find that every reader is a friend and every author is approachable. My greatest pleasure in writing is attempting to connect with you, my readers. Do you love novels about spiritual warfare? Me too. So much so that I read all I could find. When I couldn't find more Christian books on spiritual warfare, I wrote my own. In doing so, I wrote for someone more important than me. That would be you, my reader. As Beverly Cleary says, if you don't see the book you want on the shelf, write it. Author Terry Palmer said this about Raven's Cove. If and when you want to chill late at night, here is the book for you, but it's way more than that. Raven's Cove takes you deep into what spiritual warfare is all about. It isn't a game. It isn't a passing fad. It's real and it wants to destroy your witness for Christ. And yes, I have an experience to share here. A few years ago, a friend of mine called in distress. She told me there was something evil in her house. She asked for help. I did not feel equipped to address evil, much less confront it. I called my pastor, who told me all Christians are equipped for battle. All I needed to remember was I was confronting this evil in the authority of Jesus Christ, not in my own authority. I went to her home. I went to the room that seemed to be the center of the problem. When I walked in the door, I felt like a sledgehammer hit me in the chest. I rebuked it in the name of Jesus. As far as I know, it left and didn't return. God is my strength and my fortress. Reviewer Peter Younghusband chose this dialogue from Raven's Cove that truly summarizes what spiritual warfare is about. I'm not scared of seeing the dead, Bartholomew. I've seen much in my time, but I cry for the souls lost to God. That is the real horror. Are you like me and enjoy spooky, eerie prose? These books are for you. If a book gives me goosebumps, I'm all in to read it to the end. Holly Girth says, be courageous and try to write in a way that scares you a little. More importantly, I would add, try and write in a way that scares your readers a lot. I was checking out at a grocery store one day. The clerk, who had purchased the Iconoclast books, asked me, how do you sleep at night? I answered, very well, thank you. She went on to tell me my books were so eerie, she couldn't read them before bed. Sometimes that's the way I feel about my books, and I love it. Author Bonnie Matthews puts it this way, Raven's Cove, a great mystery by Marianne Paul. Avoid it when winds are gusting to hurricane speed outside. No extra creepiness needed. One of my readers, L.F. Geth, said this about the Iconoclast series. If you want spooky, eerie prose, this is the book to read. I like to read a trilogy or a series, one book after the other, so I waited until Marianne wrote the third book in the trilogy before I started reading Raven's Cove. This is, in essence, a Christian series, and although I'm not a Christian, I thoroughly enjoyed the story of good versus evil. I became engrossed in the story and couldn't wait for the end so that I could start reading Ingress, the second book. I'm in the middle of that one now, and it's just as malevolent in structure as the first one. I'm loving it. After Ionia Froment read Raven's Cove, she wrote, this book wasn't quite what I expected after reading the blurb, but it turned out to be an interesting read with quite a lot of elements that made it worth the time. The paranormal abounds, and there is no shortage of creepiness. Are you someone like me and enjoy a book where good wins in seemingly hopeless circumstances? I think this is what promoted Walt Disney to say, the important thing to teach a child is that good can always triumph over evil. I probably just dropped the word can because good always triumphs over evil. For example, in the Bible, John 16:33 sums it up nicely. I found a wonderful quote that paraphrases this verse. We know how this all ends. God wins. One Amazon customer wrote, "Good book, good versus evil, but good wins. I liked the great portrayal of the evil characters and the heroine. I would recommend this book for any age." I feel this is a good time to talk about the herniated disc, which ended my career in administration. What I didn't say earlier is that this was one of my darkest, loneliest times. And in the darkness, the light showed through. God, through Jesus Christ, healed my neck without surgery. Yes, it took several years to be completely pain-free, but I am free of pain. God is good. God is faithful. God always wins. I write to give a breath of fresh air in the Christian horror genre. But it was humbling when author Jeff Babcock wrote, "Step aside, Stephen King. Alaska's Marianne Paul is here to spin new tales of the supernatural and the ungodly as her heroes and heroines take on the forces of evil on the last frontier." And then book reviewer Peter Younghusband added this, "A breath of fresh air in the Christian horror genre and true to the biblical spiritual warfare, brilliantly executed." Author Frank Redmond agreed with my publisher when he wrote, "Marianne Paul is without a doubt America's lady of supernatural thrillers. A master storyteller with an exceptional insight into the spiritual realm around us and God's providence." An Amazon reader summed it up. "I love a book that makes you forget you are reading and puts you into the action as if you were standing and watching it actually happening. In this case, that would involve watching evil beings that are reminiscent, to me, of H.P. Lovecraft's horrid characters. Lovecraft was the past master of tales of horror, and he overshadows Stephen King's work in my mind. Marianne's writing has sensitivity and an instinctive way of creating in-your-face scenes that you might wish weren't quite so vivid at times. Her characters are well-formed and believable, but I might leave the light on afterwards." When I read all the nice things people say about my writing, it makes me almost believe what my readers are saying. It's really humbling when I think about it. My publisher keeps reminding me that he's not alone in referring to me as America's Lady of Supernatural Thrillers. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'd sure like it if we could keep in touch. Thanks for being here today. I look forward to meeting and associating with you.